Chapter 4: Earth's Fiery Volcanoes. The big question: how do scientists determine where volcanoes might develop? Imagine seeing new land form right before your eyes. You can do just that on the island of Hawaii in the Hawaiian island chain. There, the Kilauea volcano has been erupting continuously since 1983. At times, red-hot lava shoots out of the crater at the volcano's top. More often, lava oozes out of cracks on the volcano's sides. As the lava flows downhill, it cools and hardens into volcanic rock. When lava flows all the way to the ocean, it cools to form rock along the shore. This adds new land to the island, making it a little bigger than it was before. Erupting volcanoes are dramatic natural events. They can be a creative force, adding new land, even whole islands to our planet. They also bring minerals from deep inside the Earth to the surface. However, volcanoes can be dangerous and destructive.
Although it doesn't matter.
Large volcanic eruptions can flatten entire forests. They can fill the air with poisonous gases and hot, choking ash. They can release rivers of lava that burn and bury everything in their path. Erupting volcanoes can also trigger earthquakes, tsunamis, and landslides. They can even change the weather all around the world. The year without a summer. In the spring of 1815, a volcano called Tambora erupted in Indonesia. It was the largest volcanic eruption in recorded history. Tambora's eruption blasted enormous amounts of ash high into the atmosphere. In the months that followed, winds distributed the ash around the globe. The fine ash particles in the air blocked some of the sunlight reaching Earth's surface. Less sunlight meant less warmth. Because of Tambora, the weather was much colder than normal in 1816. There were hard frosts in New England all summer long. A foot of snow fell in eastern Canada in June. Weeks of cold rain killed most of the crops in Europe. Many people called 1816 the year without a summer. What is a volcano? A volcano is a hill or mountain that forms over a crack in Earth's crust from which lava erupts. The crack leads down to a chamber or huge space filled with magma which comes from the mantle. Tremendous pressure and heat in the mantle force magma in the chamber upward through the crack. If the pressure is great enough, magma erupts on the surface as lava. Some volcanic eruptions are relatively calm and quiet, whereas others are sudden and violent. Each time lava erupts, a new layer of rock forms, making the volcano bigger and bigger. Many volcanoes gradually become high, cone-shaped mountains. Mount Vesuvius in Italy and Mount Fuji in Japan are good examples of volcanoes with this distinctive shape. Vesuvius and Fuji have something else in common. They are active volcanoes. An active volcano is one that has erupted in the past 10,000 years and is likely to erupt again. When an active volcano hasn't erupted in a long time, it is considered a dormant volcano. Extinct volcanoes are those that have not erupted for at least 10,000 years. Action at the edge. If you wanted to see a lot of volcanoes, where would you look? Volcanoes form where there are cracks and weak spots in Earth's crust. You'll find those mostly along the boundaries of tectonic plates that are moving apart. Volcanoes are also common where two plates are slowly colliding and one plate is subducting under the other. The Pacific Plate is one of Earth's largest tectonic plates. It lies beneath the Pacific Ocean. Along its boundaries, the Pacific Plate is subducting under several other plates. Geologists call the places where this is happening subduction zones. Deep ocean trenches and many volcanoes have formed along subduction zones. This is because the edge of a subducting plate melts as it descends into Earth's hot mantle. Magma moves up through cracks in the crust and erupts to form volcanoes above the subduction zone. More than 450 active volcanoes lie around the edges of the Pacific Plate. Those are just the ones on land. Many more rise up from the seafloor and are hidden beneath the ocean's surface. Together, all of these volcanoes form what is called the Ring of Fire around much of the Pacific Ocean. It is one of the most volcanically active regions on Earth. Hotspots. Not all volcanoes form along plate boundaries. Some occur in places that geologists call hotspots. A hotspot is a very hot region deep within the mantle. A huge magma chamber forms beneath Earth's crust at a hotspot. Magma periodically erupts from the chamber through cracks in the crust. Geologists have identified dozens of hotspots worldwide. Some are beneath continental crust. Others are beneath oceanic crust. Hotspots underneath oceanic crust have formed many islands. The process begins when magma erupting from a hotspot forms a volcano on the sea floor. With repeated eruptions, the volcano grows taller and taller over time. Eventually, the top of the volcano may rise above the ocean's surface and form an island. Over a very long period of time, ocean hotspots may form chains of islands. This is because hotspots remain in the same place while tectonic plates slowly keep moving. The Hawaiian Islands, for example, were formed by a hotspot located beneath the middle of the Pacific Plate. The island of Kauai formed about 5 million years ago. It began as an undersea volcano that grew tall enough to rise above the water. As the Pacific Plate inched its way northwest, however, Kauai moved along with it. At some point, the island was no longer directly above the hotspot. A new underwater volcano began forming on the sea floor. This volcano grew to form the island of Oahu. Next came the island of Molokai, then Maui, and finally the island of Hawaii. Hawaii currently lies over the hotspot, which is why it has so many active volcanoes. Eventually, Hawaii will drift away from the hotspot, and a new island will begin to form. A garden of geysers. Have you ever been to Yellowstone National Park? If so, you've stood over North America's largest hotspot. A great plume of magma rises from the mantle at this spot. It fills an enormous magma chamber beneath Earth's crust. In short, Yellowstone sits on top of one of the world's largest volcanoes. Geologists call it a supervolcano. Heat from the magma beneath Yellowstone is what creates the park's hot springs and geysers. Geysers are hot springs that periodically erupt like volcanoes of hot water. Geysers form when water drains down into openings in the ground above the magma chamber. Heat from the magma turns the water scalding hot. As the hot water rises back up through the openings, some of it turns to steam. This increases the pressure, forcing the mixture of steam and hot water to rush and bubble upward. When it reaches the surface, a hissing fountain of hot water and steam explodes out of the ground. Yellowstone's most famous geyser is called Old Faithful. It got its name because it erupts reliably more than a dozen times a day. Magma itself hasn't erupted from the Yellowstone hotspot for hundreds of years. Could the Yellowstone supervolcano erupt again? It's possible, geologists say, but most doubt it will happen anytime soon.